Welcome to A Pair of Bookends, the book club you can carry anywhere. I'm your host, Hannah MacDonald, and I'll be bookending the conversation with some of the most exciting voices from the bookish world. Welcome to another episode in our debut Spotlight series, where we shine a light on the freshest authors and their work. Today, that spotlight is on Lucas Oakeley and his debut novel, Nearly Departed, which is out now and published by Bedford Square. Nearly Departed is a book about love, grief, and modern dating. Lucas has somehow created the perfect balance of a novel that is both hilarious and gut-wrenchingly moving. Described by Jack Ruck, creator and writer of Channel 4's Big Boys, as utterly charming and hilarious, this is a debut that should be firmly on your radar. Lucas Oakeley is a writer and journalist based in London. He has contributed to a wide range of publications including GQ, Vogue, New York Magazine, National Geographic, The Economist, Esquire and Vice, to name a few. Previously, Lucas served as senior content editor at Mob and was shortlisted as a finalist for the Guild of Food Writers Food Writing Award in 2020. Lucas is also the creator of popular TikTok and Instagram book club 5 Books for Boys, which encourages men to read fiction. Here to chat all about his debut, Nearly Departed. Welcome, Lucas, to A Pair of Bookends.
Hey, thanks for having me. It's weird hearing all your sort of your life summed up in about a minute, but you did a pretty good job. Yeah, that's me. That is what I've done.
I mean, you've done lots of amazing things. We did have a brief chat before we started recording about how cool I think it is that you've worked for Mob. I think a lot of people got very into their cooking during lockdown, and I think Mob definitely hooked a lot of us in. So I found that very cool when I looked at your bio. Yeah, you've had a pretty cool career so far.
Yeah, Mob was a really interesting experience. I sort of cut my teeth there. I started when I was relatively young. I left sort of 4-5 years old. I learned a lot there about content, the internet, sort of the way that things get made and how people actually interact with things online. In a lot of ways, I think we did quite a hard pivot, maybe like 3/4 of the way into my tenure there, but we realised the content we were making that I was doing went online wasn't actually what people wanted to buy. So then we sort of had to try and realise, what do people actually want from something? And that just got me thinking with books and writing. Just because you're writing something doesn't necessarily mean people want to read it. And then trying to figure out things that people actually want rather than just writing something that you want to write is quite a hard balance to find. So that was quite a good learning experience. And then I got to eat loads of delicious food as well, which always helps.
Always a treat. We will get into the food descriptions in your book because I'm a massive foodie and love chatting about food, so I will be asking about that later. But I do love to start, before we get into your book, by asking what you're currently reading.
Yeah, super. So I'm reading Flesh by David Saloy currently.
Such a banger.
The book shortlist. It's amazing. I'm about I think I'm only about 80, 90 pages in. I read the first 20 pages and I was hooked. I thought it was excellent. It's so good. I loved his other novel, All That Man Is. I read that sort of when it came out back in the day, and it was a real big text for me in terms of getting back into reading. I think I studied English at university. I was doing lots of sort of technical work, thinking about it really hard, and I sort of read that as like a pleasure read, and it reminded me that you can just read books for fun, and it can be just a complete joy, just for entertainment purposes. And that was a real, that sort of sparked me to get back into reading for pleasure. And then now seeing him with his next book, I'm just like, this. He just keeps getting better and better. It's incredible.
He's so good. Flesh is actually the first book of his that I have read, which I deserve a slap on the wrist for because obviously he's he's so prolific in the literature space. But that was the first book of his I read, and it was such a joy to get to. And now I'm going to have to get hold of everything else that he's written because it's just, he's just so incredible at what he does. I also want to ask you, start with, about what I mentioned in your intro, which is about your online book club campaign sort of thing. It's to encourage men to read more fiction, and I think David Saloy is probably a good jumping off point. I'd love to start by asking how that idea sort of came about, and then I'd love to find out what some of the favourites might have been.
Super. So I've been doing it for quite a while now, I think almost 2 years. And I kind of, the seed idea basically came where I would always be online consuming book content on sort of Instagram, on TikTok and scrolling through it, but never really finding anything that spoke to me personally. It was a lot of fantasy stuff. It's a lot of romantasy stuff. It was a lot of books that necessarily aren't within my wheelhouse, which is great, but they're not something that really gets me going. They're not something I read in my spare time. And there's always sort of these news headlines going on about how men don't read enough and men aren't reading and men aren't writing. And the sort of everything that I was seeing recommended by men tended to be like either a self-help book, like a Jordan Peterson, or sort of a Rich Dad, Poor Dad. These books that weren't necessarily terrible, but we're kind of doing this weird insidious thing where I think men feel they need to improve every single facet of their life,
Yeah.
but every second, where it's all this self-improvement hustle culture where I thought it'd be nice for men to maybe connect more with the emotional side of things. I think fiction to me is the perfect conduit for that. It's how you can engage your imagination. It's how you can engage in a story and you can feel different things that other people have felt, even if you don't relate to them at all, which is the beautiful thing about it. So I figured if I kind of want to see that, there's got to be at least 3, 4 other people who want to see it as well. So I made a little video saying like, look, everyone keeps recommending Jordan Peterson. I think he's an idiot. You should read these 5 books for boys instead. And then it sort of got really good traction. It got like tens of thousands of views from there. And then I sort of thought that this is a format that's quite easily repeatable. I could do that again. I did it again the next month with another 5 books, and then did it again the month after that with another 5 books, and it kept sort of taking off and kept snowballing, and people seem to really engage in it, which is really sweet. And then from that, me and 2 friends have launched a boys book club in person where we meet up every single month and talk about books. And it's been nice to see the fallout in real life afterwards.
I love that. And has there been any favourites that have been popular amongst everyone that's turned up? As have people said like, oh no, I actually really love this one? Has there been, because sometimes with book clubs I find that there can be kind of mixed opinions on a book, but has there been any that have been like favourites across the board?
Yeah, it always is quite fun and interesting discussions afterwards. It's not always the books that you think it's going to be. I think the top ranked one from our club so far has been Percival Everett's The Trees, and then also Any Human Heart by William Boyd, which is sort of this big, long romp. I think that was the most like joyful discussion in the book club, where everyone's just like, had a great time with this. What fun. We all just had a really nice time. We've done a Jilly Cooper as well, which was actually better received than we thought. We did Imogen, which is one about her sort of going off with a tennis player and having a holiday abroad, which is great and good fun. And then, there's a few that have quite sort of spiky responses. I think Sally Rooney really split the crowd, which is interesting.
I mean, that doesn't surprise me. I'm a massive Sally Rooney fan, but I know that she can be quite
divisive.
No words will come into me then. Yeah, she can be quite divisive. I know a lot of people moan about the lack of speech marks. That just seems to really bother people. Whereas I'm like, I don't care. Like, I'll let her do whatever she wants because
I love it.
I love the content.
Yeah, writing's so good. I didn't love Beautiful World, Where Are You? But I think every other one of her works to say comfortably.
Yeah. It's so funny, that book seems to be the one that a lot of people didn't get on with, but I did love that one. I want to also quickly mention you wrote this amazing essay for Service 95 in summer, which is around the topics that we've just been speaking about. And I will link that essay in the show notes. And something that you did just kind of mention, but this line in particular made me absolutely cackle. Men would literally rather read about military tactics written in 5th century China than go to therapy. And I just thought...
It's depressingly true as well. I mean, that's a reference to sort of Sun Tzu's The Art of War, which is literally always on bestseller lists because men seem to think that stoicism and reading about these old school military tactics is going to somehow be useful in their day-to-day life. And I don't get it. It's like men who work in recruitment who think somehow this is going to make a difference in their business meeting. Like, to me, it seems so alien to everything that you should be trying to do to better yourself. They're almost going too far to one way, going like completely devoid of emotion, just thinking about life as a tactic or a war, which is a bit mad when really you're just getting up and like logging into a computer.
Yeah, it's pretty mental. You did also write in that essay, while there are heaps of women authors writing poignantly and effectively about love, more men writing and reading about love isn't just helpful but necessary. Now, I agree, but tell us why you feel that way.
I think to me, it's like obviously growing up as a man and someone who identifies as a man, male role models do make such a big impact in your life. There is something about this sort of father figures, whether they're actual father or the sort of surrogate father figures coming in, where you do have a job as an adult male to be a representative for the youth of today. They do look up to you in ways that a woman can try and do, but will never exactly be able to do. And I think it's really hard nowadays, especially to find positive male role models. It's why teachers at school are such a big thing, is a big drive in primary schools to get more male teachers, just to have that kind of touch point from a young age of someone who's willing to cry, willing to show emotion, willing to sort of engage themselves in a slightly different way that's not your sort of prototypical big bad male, and there's loads of other male writers in the space. Like I love David Nichols, I think he's incredible. Bobby Palmer,
Yeah.
Mike Gale. There are sort of others who sort of work in the same wheelhouse, which it's great to be sort of a part of that. But I think it just does to me to be a few more of them, not just men writing books about cowboys and guns.
Yeah, exactly. I do think you write beautifully about love, and I think it really is refreshing when you come across male authors, engaging with stories like that and writing stories like that, because you're like, oh, there are men out there that can actually feel things and aren't afraid to feel things. And I think that's just kind of so nice to see. But I would really love to start by asking you about the initial inspiration for Nearly Departed.
Yeah, of course. It's sort of a twofold answer to that question. I used to work in Clapham, in an office down there. I used to work for a food magazine, and then one day, literally sort of coming into work in the office, I actually saw a woman on her bike go into the back of a really large truck, and then
Oh my God.
seeing it in the moment, it's one of those big instances where you don't really know what's going on. It's quite hard to kind of like digest what's just happened, but instantly someone's just died. It's the first time I've ever seen someone die, and immediately your body goes, that's a person who's not alive anymore. You see it happen, and then for the next few days, we're sort of coming into work, and you see these flowers left by sort of the road where it happened, and to me, it was sort of quite a stark experience. But the biggest thing that I was thinking of was, what would it be like to someone who actually knows the person? What if that's your partner, your girlfriend, your mum, your sister, your daughter? That would be the worst thing on the planet, just a random day of your life to completely turn it over. So that was a sort of an incident that was always simmering at the back of my mind. And then also, my father was married before my mum, so he got married quite young when he was about 18, I think. And unfortunately, his first wife passed away. So in a way, that's always been kind of like part of our the sort of family history and family law. It's understanding that love can exist again in many ways. It doesn't have to be a one and done thing. You can love multiple people. Love can die, love can disappear, love can end, but it can always come back again. So it's almost that hope of second chances. And I wouldn't exist if my dad hadn't remarried my mother. So it's always,
Yeah.
there is hope at the end of the tunnel. And those sort of things combined with my obsession with like 90s rom-coms kind of fueled the end result, I think, which was, it started off as an idea during COVID, where I think most people had sort of ideas and decided to start noodling around with things. And then eventually I sort of taken it a bit more seriously as it went on.
I mean, I'm really glad that you did take it seriously
Yeah.
because I absolutely loved this book, and I don't know why my memory is getting so much worse with age. I'm only 30, and it's just getting horrendous to the point where we obviously had a conversation about you coming on the podcast, and I would have obviously read the bio, thought I really want to read this book. I really want to have you on the podcast, but it's just. I must have accepted it, and then it's just immediately gone out of my head because I wasn't prepared within the few pages for what happened. It was just so unexpected, and I was like, "How have I not remembered that it
literally on
says it in the
book as well,
blurb? Literally, how have I not remembered this?" So it really took me by surprise, and I kind of, in the last like couple of sentences, I could kind of feel where we were going to, and I was like, "No, no, 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 no," and then.
It's been quite a fun experience because again, having written the book, I've never been surprised by any point of the narrative because it's always coming out of my head. It's been fun having people come up to me and say, "I didn't expect this to happen. I didn't expect Y to happen. I was so shocked and surprised by this," because I have never been able to have that experience as a reader, and I never
Yeah.
will, which is quite. It's quite a frustrating experience sometimes writing a book and going, I don't know what it's like to read it because in your head, all you do is know exactly what's coming up next.
Yeah, I mean, it was one of those deaths that took me by surprise, which again, we just said like it's in the blurb, so I don't know
Yeah.
why it did, but you're in Beth's head, you're kind of going through life as her, and then all of a sudden you're like, whoa, like, it's one of those like really awful, like in one day, that death is just, and I feel like, I can spoil one day by now, like
I
enough
think
people
so.
have
Yeah,
read it.
people have seen it, they've watched it, they've read it, they've cried. We've all cried.
But it's one of those that like really like hits you in the
Mm.
gut and you're like, this can't possibly be happening. I do want to ask you about Joel, your protagonist. I feel like I'm split between Joel and Beth in who I have more in common with. I really related to him in the way that he sort of second guesses everything. He overthinks a lot of what he says, especially when he's dating. And he's also, as you write, he was one of those people who would start thinking about lunch halfway through breakfast and be planning his dinner before he'd even finished his lunch,
Yeah.
which
Yeah,
I love so much.
he's fun. He's a sort of a relatably frustrating character. I think a lot of people respond in different ways. I think to him being such a big part of the narrative. I think Beth seems to be a character that most people respond really warmly to and seem to really love her and seem to think she's kind of like a really engaging character. Joel seems to be quite splits the crowd a little bit with people going like, I think this bloke is really, really insufferable, and other people think like this bloke is really, really relatable, which is quite funny. I think it's kind of meant to be both. It's almost like the worst parts of
Yeah.
yourself kind of come out during grief and during these experiences. You sort of become very selfish, you become very solipsistic, so you do things just for yourself in some ways, and that was kind of representing that in some ways. But also, I think humans are genuinely quite, mundane, and we always come back to our same routines and stuff, and he's almost like stuck in this little rut the whole time of like his life and what he thinks life can be, and then it sort of takes, the narrative of the plot to kind of bring him out of it and make him hopefully see that he's been ignoring his friends, been ignoring his life, he's been ignoring everything else that's going on around him because he keeps getting stuck in this little cycle. So I think he was really fun to write, but also, yeah, it's been interesting to see people who really dislike him at the end of it. I don't think that's a bad thing. You're not meant to completely like him. I think he's meant to be a relatively complex-ish character.
I mean, we all love complex characters, and he is, I can kind of see, there are times when he's insufferable and when you kind of go, oh,
Mm,
like, why have you said that? He
yeah.
really puts his foot in it sometimes, but I do think ultimately he is a very lovable character. I do really want to ask you about the death and grief aspects in the
Mhm.
book, and how Joel is sort of learning to navigate life after loss. He's dealing with this kind of conundrum that he's got where he has to fall in love within 3 years. After he's lost his girlfriend. And I wanted to ask, first of all, how has writing about death and grief and those sort of subjects, what has it kind of taught you about those things?
I mean, quite a lot. It's a lot of research involved as well, and sort of talking
Mm,
to people and trying to find out how different people react in different ways. It does make you think a lot about life. Funny enough, when you start writing about death, you think more about life and how you can make the most of it and how you want to keep things, existing, keep things rolling for as long as possible. Really, it's what makes you want to avoid it as much as you can, but also it makes you face it in some ways and think about it and what would the fallout be, and start planning your will and doing all these different sort of like admin involved. Because to me, the interesting thing about it was, I think grief that's sort of straight away and it's really raw is interesting, and there's the lots of rich stuff you can get from it. But to me, it was almost that 3 years down the line where it's come a bit less sharp. It's a bit more sort of vague. You're still feeling grief, but it's not the most important thing on your mind. It cannot be the most important
mm,
thing in your mind anymore. It just sort of has to live with you. It's like carrying sort of a load on your shoulders the entire time. Like, that to me was more interesting, where it goes, what do you do when that's over and life has to sort of go on? You're still carrying this thing around with you. You don't really know what to do with it or what you can do with it. And that's a big part of life. I think everyone's going to experience death and love at some point. Those are the big two themes, everyone kind of has to, hopefully will experience. It means you're not going to experience grief if you haven't loved, and you can't really experience, love if you don't try and put yourself out there again. So yeah, it's taught me a lot about life in some ways, but also I think I'm still so much left to experience. I'm not even
yeah.
30 yet, so I'm like, oh God, it's all still to come. But it's been quite nice. It's been good practice, I think.
Yeah, for sure. I think grief is such a complicated emotion, and I think we all respond to it in very different ways. And I was really curious, actually, why you chose to jump ahead in time, as in a couple of years after he loses Beth, rather than exploring the immediate aftermath of the fact.
I think to me that's sort of where you'd start moving on with your life potentially realistically. I mean, he has this argument with Beth at some point about when is a good time to move on, when should
Mm,
someone move on with their life, and those questions to me are inherently interesting because at some point you are going to have to ask yourself that question, and to be in their shoes, you don't really know. I think immediately it's easy to say, how would you feel if your partner died? You'd feel upset, you'd feel this, you'd feel that. You'd obviously be distraught. I think everyone would be able to answer that question. How would you feel when your partner died? How would you feel 3 years later is a harder question to answer, I think. And
yeah.
I think if you ask anyone, they'd all have quite conflicting responses. I think you look at life, you look how people react to grief. Some people move on completely, some people move on slowly, some people never move on. And there's always different ways that people react to it depending on who you are as a person. I think getting into that and sort of trying to uncover what kind of person would Joel be if this happened, how would he eventually start moving on with his life? And it's the weird routines when he starts feeling guilty for his grief. I find that
Mm,
quite an interesting thing because again, what would your partner want for you? There's no way for anyone to ever know that, unfortunately. But what if she came back and you could ask her, and then it's like, oh, okay, maybe this is an interesting way to get into a story. If he goes back, what would they tell you to do, and what would someone who's just died and seen you trying to move on, what would they advise you to do with your life, and what should you do?
yeah, I think this book is such a great kind of conversation starter. I was reading lots of parts of it out to my boyfriend. He really loves it when I do that, and I
Yeah.
go, "You must stop everything you're doing and listen to this." And there were aspects, as I said, of Joel's character that I
Mm,
really related to, but there was a lot with Beth that
mm.
resonated with me. And there was a part where she like asks Joel, would he still love her if she was like the size of a mouse or
Yeah.
something like that?
I
And
think
there's
that's
a, Those are the kind of questions I ask.
I think it's based on a real life question my partner asked me one time. So I think there's a lot of like real life tidbits. So it's like, well, this has happened to me. This is real, so I'm going to put that in there, babe. Thank you.
I'm glad to know that it's not just me being an absolute weirdo to my partner, and it's.
Yeah. It's
But yeah,
consistent across the board, I think. Yeah.
well, we were having a discussion about the question that she asks of how
Mhm.
long would it take him to move on? And I think you're right. Like it is something that would sort of
Mhm.
split people, because the irrational part of me
Mhm.
is like, no, I don't want the partner that I'm now with and love very
Yeah.
much, to go off and be with somebody else. I can't think of anything worse, but of course, you don't want them to sit there and be depressed. And my boyfriend is, they have this whole argument, Joel and Beth, about
Mhm.
how sometimes she wants him to just say something that
Mhm.
that he knows will make her happy, or that isn't necessarily true, but will, keep her satisfied or whatever, rather than, saying something completely rational. He switches on the very rational part of his brain and
Yeah.
answers things in that way. And that's very much what my boyfriend's like. He can be overly rational sometimes, and I'm like,
Mhm.
no, tell me what I want to hear.
I think it's quite a classic male response to things as
Yeah,
well. It's this sort of I can fix it
yeah,
mentality where it's like, no, like tough love, I'm going to tell you what's right and wrong. Like sometimes you don't want to hear that. You want to hear a lie that makes you feel good. And that's sort of it's
yeah,
realizing that life is about that. And it's all about compromise as well at some point. I think love is in many ways is realizing, which bits you're gonna have to give up yourself for someone else. And that is, part of the parcel. You can't always do what you want to do. You can't always give the rational answer if someone wants to hear something else.
hmm,
Sometimes you need to tell them what they want to hear, and that's okay.
yeah, yeah, definitely. I'm gonna relay that to my boyfriend
Yeah.
after this chat. Lucas
Lucas
said.
said, yeah.
I do really want to ask you about another important relationship in Joel's life, which is his friendship with Sam, which he does describe at one point as outside of Beth and his relationship with Beth, as Sam being one of the greatest loves of his life, which I think is such a beautiful thing. I was curious, was this sort of important male friendship, this positive male friendship, was that something that was important to you to represent?
Yes, yeah, definitely. I think that's something where in my own life, I find my friendships are the longest relationships I've been in, really. I've got friends I've known for sort of, some for like 20 years, other ones
Hmm.
for like 10, 15 years. And they're such important things about life, I think. Like everyone, these are just the people you choose to hang out with, which is quite a bizarre. The more you think about friends, it is odd. These are just the friends that you speak to in text and then hang out with all the time. Just other human beings like on the earth that you just happen to have a fun time with. And yeah, they are so such an important part of the fabric of life and enjoyment.
Yeah.
I think to me, male friendship is a really interesting thing because it gets a lot of flack. I think a lot of
Hmm.
people see it as it can be toxic, and it can be
Yeah.
not good, and it can be dangerous. It can lead to all sorts of situations where people are forced to be a person they're not want to forced to be. I think male friendship can also be embracing. It can be a
Hmm.
brotherhood. It can be sweet. It can be sincere. And I think you do need to experience both. And sometimes I've learned a lot from my female friends. I've learned a lot from my male friends. I'm glad that I have both of them because I can see what they can bring to you each side. I think you do kind of need a little bit of an outlet either way. I think that to me, right about male friendship is an important thing because again, you want to show people that it is love. You're allowed to say you love your friends. That's how you love your mates, and you're allowed to give them a hug. It's okay. You don't have to always, give them a firm pat on the back.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean, men are famously, they struggle to kind of, they've kind of been taught that men
Mm.
can't be emotional. It's sort of a societal conditioning that, men aren't allowed to be emotional. You don't say I love you, you don't hug your mates and all that kind of stuff. And I think it's really cool to see people like breaking
Mm.
those societal norms, and knowing that like it's more than normal to tell your
Mm.
mates that you love them and to be there for them and to hold them accountable, and all those kind of things. So it was really refreshing to read about Joel's friendship with Sam, and I was really intrigued by something that you wrote, which
Mm.
is that Joel had faith that male friendships were somehow more resilient than female friendships. Do you think that's true?
I don't know if I think that's true. I think it's an interesting one where it's a lot of the blokes I know sort of have these strange friendships with people where they never see their mates. They'll be really close friends with someone. They won't see them for like this is maybe once a year, twice a year.
Mhm.
And then yet when they meet up again, it's as if nothing has really changed. They sort of pick up back where they left off with this kind of like stasis level of like I think because men tend to get a little less and maybe less emotionally caught up in their friendships. They
Yeah.
think there's less politics involved of hanging out more with this person or that person. Why have you seen them and you're not seeing me? And it's more like when you see me, I am your friend. When you don't see me, it's okay if you see other people, which
Yeah.
is for better or worse. I think men are good at compartmentalizing those friendships where. I think a lot of my friendships with women, they tend to be a bit more competitive in some ways, or they revolve
Mm,
maybe about they need slightly more from their friendships. I think men, because they learn to expect less, do expect less from their relationships
yeah.
and their friendships in some ways. They're willing to accept maybe less contact, less texts, less, voice notes.
Yeah. It's so interesting though to hear the male perspective on female friendships because
Mm,
I speak about female friendships so much on the podcast and I think it's
mm,
such an intense dynamic. But you're so right, like it is quite a competitive one and it is very much that if we don't see each other for a long period of time, it's there's sort of an animosity there of like, oh well, why
mm.
is that? Who have you chosen over me? And I don't think it's necessarily intentional. It's just something that happens. So
Yeah, it's quite a natural, it's a natural response, I think, to sort of worry about
yeah,
these things. You do have to sort of, I mean, friendships are relationships. You do have to tend to them. I think it's
yeah,
just because
definitely.
there's kind of a lower maintenance. Men are just a different house plant, basically. They can rely on less water. You
Different
can sort of,
house.
they can just be in the corner and just kind of like vibe.
Just vibe. I
Yeah.
love that. I did say I wanted to talk to you about food
Mm,
writing, or food in
please.
general. There is so much great food writing in the book, and obviously, I've had a look through your Instagram, and there's lots of amazing food pictures
Mm.
on there, which I absolutely love to see. Do you think there's ever a world in which food writing or food descriptions wouldn't have been in this novel?
I don't know. It's something that was actually initially quite a hard sell to agents when I was sort of
Really?
first pitching myself out there because all my writing is basically involved in food. Like 90% of sort of the bylines you mentioned are
Yeah.
writing about food. I do some culture bits as well. I've done celebrity profiles and writing about television and art. But I think food is the bulk of my oeuvre. And then I
Mm,
think trying to convince people that I can write about something that's not food was a little bit of a jump for some. They're going, why isn't it about food? I'm like, well, because I was sort of writing about food in my day to day. It felt a bit like a busman's holiday, then going home and writing a whole book about food. I wanted to do something that was completely different. So it was almost
yeah.
like for purely selfish reasons, I wanted to enjoy myself writing fiction, something that didn't have too much in. And then yet you read the book and there's heaps of food discussions. There's sort of like these long descriptions of there's a puttanesca getting described at one
Yeah.
point. There's lots. That's quite a lot of pasta in the book, which is delicious. But yeah, wonder what that means. I think it's hard for me because it's such a big part of sensation, a big part of my life where if you're writing characters who sort of maybe resemble you in some ways, it's quite easy to write about because you go, this is how I think about food. This is
Yeah.
maybe how he'd think about food. And I think I know so many people where it's such a pivotal part of our relationships and our friendships
Hmm.
where you tend to meet someone, you break bread over food. It's really most of your good discussions. If me and my
Yeah,
partner need
definitely.
to, talk about something, we'll talk about something over dinner where we're not watching the telly, we'll just sit at the table. And it does feel different when you're eating food with someone and talking about someone because you get rid of all the
Mm.
distractions of what you're doing. You can just focus on whatever you're talking about. I think that's where I think a lot of most of my happy memories are around the dinner table growing up as well. As a family, we'd always have dinner and it would always be quite a big part of the day. I think from there, it's then become this weird sort of, place where I think emotions are allowed to live a little bit more around food.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's the only bad time where, discussions, important discussions happening around food. The only tragic thing is when, it all kind of kicks off and that food gets left.
Yeah.
I always think about this Christmas dinner that
Mm.
was had in my family, and it kicks off, and people left the table, and my Christmas dinner got chucked away, and
Oh,
it's genuinely the most devastating thing that's happened to me.
that's horrible. That's really quite sad. Again, it's that lost joy as well. You know how good it is, and knowing you're never going to experience that again. Yeah, as many times as you like, you can never relive that. You're like, oh
Yeah.
God,
So that year I didn't get a Christmas dinner. Fuming.
I'd be fuming too. Do you get turkey sandwich the next day at least?
No, I don't think I did.
Wow,
Yeah, I was really
brutal.
punished that year.
That's a brutal Christmas. Yeah, cold for dinner. There you go.
I was well
Horrible.
behaved as a teenager after that.
Yeah, but you go. It's a learning curve. You learn a lot. You learn a big lesson from that.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Mm.
There is a question in the book that Joel asks Alice, and he talks about their friendship and how she allows for him to ask these sort of strange
Mm.
questions that I don't really think are strange, but other people might.
Mm.
And he asks her, if you could only eat foods that start with the same letter for the rest of your life, which letter would you choose? And I was wondering if from writing
Mm.
that you've thought through what your answer would be.
Oh, yeah. It's a question I also asked with color is also quite a fun one. If you like one food of one
Yes.
color, which one would it be? So they're all in the vague sort of same wheelhouse of like stupid shit I ask people at the pub. But I think C was always quite a good one. I think C, you can at
I
least
was
get
thinking this
like
last night.
you can get chicken, you can get
Crisps,
carrots,
chocolate,
crisps, yeah, chocolate, cottage cheese, just to name
cottage
another two.
cheese.
So like you need to think about health as well is the important thing. You got to think you've got enough vegetables to live by, you got enough protein to kind of, not die, and you've got enough carbs to sort of keep yourself going. Crackers, there you go. Crackers, chicken, and cheese.
I love
What a life.
crackers.
That's good.
Yeah,
That's a good life, that, to be fair.
yeah. Do
Christmas
you?
dinner,
Oh my
maybe
God,
come with
Christmas
it.
dinner! I'd never
Yeah.
lose out again.
There you go, fine. There you go. Eat Christmas dinner every day for the rest of your life.
You mentioned cottage cheese then. There's a lot of people
Mm.
saying that online that cottage cheese is a bit of a
Mm.
cult at the minute. Do you agree?
It is. It seems to be a really easy way of lobbing like an extra 20, 30 grams of protein in a dish. So like from a
Yeah.
really cynical point of view, you basically see someone's made like a pasta salad, and if you add a cottage cheese in there, suddenly it's a high protein pasta salad, which everyone wants. So it's basically a shortcut hack into getting high protein on any kind of recipe online, which means everyone's going to click on it. And I quite like it. It is quite salty though, I would say, cottage cheese.
Yeah, it can be for sure. That my favorite. I only really like the. It's a very specific brand. Is it like Longley Farm or Langley Farm?
Yeah.
It's a really banging cottage cheese. I never thought I'd be talking about cottage cheese on the podcast,
I
but
used to, I used to at university. This is horrible. It's really telling on myself here. I used to get cottage cheese, put it in a bowl, add a scoop of protein powder, then add frozen fruit and just mix it up and eat that. It was awful.
oh my God.
I was a young man back banging gym, trying to get
I
tongue.
mean, it's not the worst thing I've seen somebody eat as a
Yeah,
student meal, so I'll let you
pretty
off
grim.
there.
There's a lot
But
of
yeah,
protein in that. Someone take the recipe, steal that, put that online.
new recipe just dropped on Mob.
Yeah.
I finally kind of want to ask you about love and yearning and all of those
Mhm.
things. This is obviously very much a novel, amongst other things, about yearning.
Mm.
And as we've just been talking about online discussions, there is a lot of discussion online around yearning and it being a lost art. Do you
Mm.
think it
Mm.
is?
I think maybe it's interesting because I've sort of been out of the dating scene for quite a while. It's hard for
Yeah.
me to kind of say with complete confidence whether people are yearning or not. I find it hard to believe that no one is yearning. I think it's such a natural human emotion and state of
Mm,
being in some ways. I mean, you read like Romeo and Juliet at the start, and he's just completely head over his heels for someone. I can't remember the name of the girl, which I'm going to get in trouble for, but it's not. It's Rosalind. Rosalind. There you go. So he's absolutely mad for us, yearning for this random woman
yeah.
who we're never going to hear from again. The whole thing. She's fine. She completely disappears, and you sort of constantly living from life. I've always sort of lived my life as a state of like yearning for a slightly different person. Like even thinking back to primary school, all the different eras I can think of as all the different crushes I used to have, and then moving on from one crush to the next group, and defines your life in lots of ways, and even your crushes on celebrities and pop stars and singers from bands and things. You do sort of have different areas when you've moved on to your new obsession. I think we're never really going to get away from it completely. I think what we're missing is people being sincere about it. I think we
Mm,
live in a culture now which is sort of we're quite big into irony. We're quite big into people sort of being too cool for school. And I think what we've missed
yeah.
out is people being open and honest because it's seen as corny because it seems cheesy because it is corny and it is cheesy, but also I think that's okay. I think you're
Yeah.
allowed to be corny, you're allowed to be cheesy because what love does is make you into this sort of big, wet, soppy mess sometimes. You might write someone a poem and they might laugh at you for it, but also there's another person out there who'd really like that poem. So I think you just got to find
Yeah.
the right person for your sort of the energy you're putting out into the world, which I think is it is possible. But yeah, I think we'll take it. We'll go come back to yearning. Everyone loves to love.
Yeah, they do. I think, like you said, though, it's just like, it's not seen as very cool, and people do like to play it cool, and maybe they are yearning, but they're hiding it. Which, yeah, I wonder if we're going to get a comeback for it when Wuthering Heights, the adaptation, drops next
Oh,
year.
yeah. I'm interested to see it. I mean, Jacob Elordi's I just like to watch him on screen. It's excellent. It's
Yeah.
just
Have you
good
seen
laugh, man.
Frankenstein?
No, I haven't seen it
I
yet.
haven't watched it yet.
I've
No.
heard mixed things, but I've heard he's very good in it. I've heard like
Yeah.
that's the more consistent thing.
Yeah, I'm very curious about that adaptation next year, especially with it's Emerald Fennell, isn't it? And Saltburn was such a success that I'm very
Yeah.
curious what she's going to do with this.
It looks at least it looks interesting. It sparked lots of
Yeah,
discourse already. People saying it's about this, it's about this, and the film's not even come out, and people are trying
yeah.
to work out the twists in it. I'm like, okay, I don't really know. If you like Jacob Elordi, there was a good TV adaptation of The Narrow Road to the Deep North, which is about this sort of Australian prisoner of war camp where they get
Oh,
trapped in Indonesia. That was really good, and that sort of it's these two storylines of a really stark prisoner of war camp and then a nice romance story. So it's kind of it scratches a lot of itches, but it's a really harrowing watch. But there's a really good scene where Jacob Elordi is having sex with someone and he holds the entire bed at once. It's incredible. Yeah, you need to see it to believe it, honestly.
Oh my God, okay. I promise that's not the
That's,
selling point, but
yeah.
I do really want to watch that.
It is really good though. I mean, if you be in a good mental headspace to watch it though, because it is a bit harrowing.
Okay.
But it's a really good adaptation of a very good novel as well.
Amazing. I will have to watch that. Lastly, I want to ask you what is next for you?
What is next? I'm currently working on book two, which is
Amazing.
fun. It's weird. You sort of get this like sophomore syndrome where I think the pressure's on to write the second book, and no one's second book is really their best book in some way. So the kind of pressure's on to make sure this one either is like as good as the first or does something different to the first, and trying to work out where I want to go with my career. So I'm at a bit of a crossroads
Mm,
currently where it's like, what do I want this book to say, and what's it going to say about me as a writer? Because I think with your debut novel, you get the excitement of being a debut and it's a fresh slate and you can start doing something and there's still room to pivot afterwards. But I think once you set down with two books, you're going to be set down a certain path and it's where do you want to go? Do you want to go this way as this sort of writer? Do you want to go this way as a slightly different writer? So I'm sort of I'm working on it currently, but it's fun. I mean I love writing. If I didn't enjoy the process, I wouldn't be doing it. And it's quite nice to hang out with different characters. It's weird doing press for a book where I'm currently hanging out with like so many different people. I'm like, well, in my head, there's these new cut toys I'm playing with. It's really exciting. It's almost like Buzz and Woody from Toy Story. I was like, Woody's the first book, and I've now got Buzz, and Buzz is class. He's got heaps of buttons, and it's really fun to play with.
I love that. Do you miss the characters from Nearly Departed?
I do, yeah. It's quite hard to sort of talk about them again because it's almost like these things, like someone they always get asked at like book events and stuff whether I'd ever write a sequel for it. And I was like, no, I don't think I ever would because once you get them and you create them and you put them in a
Yeah.
box, it's quite hard to open it up again. I think it makes it a little difficult. It's quite nice to have them in stasis and have them sort of living there. I do find rereading my work now quite difficult. I've not even listened to the audiobook. I need to actually amend that at some point and give it a go. But it's quite hard to sort of revisit them in some ways. It's almost like,
Yeah.
yeah, a little painful.
Yeah, I can imagine. Would you ever adapt it?
I mean, I'd love to. Yeah, if anyone wants
Yeah.
to, throw some money at me to do that,
Come on,
that'd be excellent.
let's make this
Yeah,
happen. I'd love
at
to
the
see it on
BBC,
screen. It'd
at
be,
Netflix. I've
oh my
heard
God,
that from a lot of
honestly,
people, which is nice. Like, no one's been like, "Oh, that's impossible to make." Everyone's been like, "That could be a telly show and a movie," which is sort of
100%.
it's not something I've intended going into it, but because I think being inspired by all those sort of like classic Nora Ephron '90s rom-coms and stuff, it is probably quite naturally lends itself well to that.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm a massive Nora Ephron fan,
Oh,
so
she's the best. She's so good.
unreal. I've got a t-shirt with her name on. That's how attached I am to her. She's
R.I.P.
amazing. I was so pleased when I saw her name pop up in your book.
She had
Um,
to at some point. You got to pay homage to the greats, I think.
Honest to God, you do.
Mm.
Lastly, I've said lastly about 100 times, but I do like to finish by asking for a recommendation. So, is there
Mhm.
anything that you've engaged with culturally recently that you'd like to recommend?
Yeah, I was a bit late to the game, but I actually finished the final episode of Mad Men yesterday.
Oh my God,
which is
I've still not
excellent.
watched it.
This is the thing. I was always that person being like, "Oh, I've never seen it. I've never seen it." Genuinely, it's so worth it. It's about
Really?
7 seasons of it, 6, 7 seasons. It's just great quality television. Everything is so
Yeah.
well done. The acting's incredible. The storylines are fantastic. And having now got through to the end, I can say it's a really satisfying ending and they tie it all up. And I think it's quite nice to watch something that was a big part of the cultural zeitgeist without
Yeah.
being able to have it spoiled for you in some ways. You can take your own
Mm.
pace with it. There's no danger of like someone revealing weekly what happened to Don or what's going on with Peggy. You can sort of like take your own time to get through to the characters, figure it out. And I think to me, it's been quite nice to finish it, but now I don't really know what I'm going to leave last because I miss them already. I really miss them. I'm still thinking about Don all the time. I sort of sitting down the other day, my partner's asking what's wrong. I was like, well, I've just finished Mad Men. I don't really know what to do with my life now. It's sort of it's an empty part of my heart currently. I need to fill with something else. But I would highly recommend it to anyone who hasn't done it. And yeah, it's a real worthy journey, I
I
think.
love that. I'm late usually to the party with quite a lot of big TV shows. I didn't
Mm.
watch Game of Thrones or Breaking Bad until lockdown, and
I've
that
never
was
seen
kind of a good
Breaking
time.
Bad.
Have you not?
No,
See,
again, that might be next. That might be the next replacement.
have you watched Succession?
Yes, I've seen that
Oh
one.
my God, such a banger. I can't think what what big thing I can recommend to you. There's so many great TV shows out there. But yeah, thank you so much, Lucas, for coming on the podcast today. I've loved chatting to you, and I absolutely loved Nearly Departed. So yeah, thank you for coming on.
No, thank you. It's very kind.
Where can the listeners find you on socials?
I should be everywhere online as just Lucas Oakley, which is LucasOakeley. People always miss out the second E. But yeah,
Yeah.
find me there, TikTok, Instagram, Goodreads. You can sort of read my book reviews as well.
Yeah, there's loads of amazing book recommendations on there. And if you enjoyed this episode, please don't forget to review and subscribe. And if you want to give us a follow, you can do so at A Pair of Bookends Pod on Instagram and at A Pair of Bookends on Twitter/X and TikTok. Lastly, go buy yourselves a copy of Nearly Departed. Links are in the show notes. Go give Lucas a follow. And thank you so much for listening. Goodbye.
Cheers. That's very, very professional at the end. Love that.